When did you stop feeling like the ruler of your own life? Was it the first time you were told to tone yourself down? The moment you realized it was safer to please than to lead? Or when life became a series of reactions to expectations, demands, and noise, instead of a kingdom you consciously shaped? Every man is born with an inner sense of order, a psychological instinct that knows how to build, protect, and bless. Jung called this the king archetype, the organizing principle of the masculine psyche. It's the part of you that says, this is my life and I will take responsibility for it. But over time, most men lose contact with that center. They trade sovereignty for survival. They become ruled by schedules, relationships, or fear. They live like subjects in their own kingdom, efficient, capable, but inwardly exiled from their throne. Reclaiming the inner king is not about dominance or grandeur. It's about remembering who governs your mind and heart. It's about restoring order where chaos has crept inside your work, your relationships, and your nervous system. In this conversation, we'll move through 5 steps, not mechanical stages, but living recognitions that return you to the seat of inner authority, not as a tyrant, not as a savior, but as a man who remembers that true power is neither loud nor fragile, it is presence. 1. What it actually is and what it isn't. The archetypal king isn't the image our culture promotes, the alpha male who commands obedience, or the detached patriarch who confuses control for respect. That's not kingship, that's compensation. Those are men who've mistaken noise for authority because silence once made them feel powerless. The true king doesn't dominate, he orders. He brings coherence to chaos. He blesses what is good and sets boundaries around what corrupts. His presence is not rooted in ego, but in stewardship. Jung saw the king as the psychic center that integrates all other archetypes, the warrior, magician, and lover, into harmony. Without the king, they act out. The warrior becomes destructive, the magician manipulative, the lover uncontained. But let's be clear, the king can't be inherited. He must be earned through self-confrontation. You can't reclaim the throne without walking through your own disorder first. The very traits you may have judged as weakness, your self-doubt, your sensitivity, your inner conflict, are the same materials that forge authentic rule. In boyhood, leadership is fantasy. You want control. In manhood, leadership is burden. You learn that control is an illusion, but responsibility is real. The inner king isn't here to make you powerful over others. He's here to make you powerful with yourself, aligned, disciplined, compassionate, and unshakably accountable. And here's the paradox. Most men lost their inner king not through failure, but through adaptation. They gave up authority to survive. They became what was needed, the good son, the reliable worker, the agreeable partner. It was a strategy that worked once, but that obedience, noble then, becomes a cage now. The king returns when obedience gives way to discernment. 2. How it appears in ordinary life. You can see the absence of the inner king in the small corners of daily life. It's in the man who wakes up already chasing, checking his phone before his breath. It's in the man who says yes when he means no, who over-explains every decision, who leads teams but avoids his own inner counsel. It's in the way he snaps at his children, not because he's cruel, but because he feels powerless, and that powerlessness humiliates him. When the king is asleep, the psyche fragments. The warrior runs wild, turning every disagreement into a battle. The magician hides, rationalizing every failure. The lover starves, chasing attention because he's forgotten how to bless himself. And through it all, the boy still waits for permission to act. 3 common signs that a man's king energy is in exile. First, disorientation. He has goals, but no inner compass. He works hard, but his efforts feel scattered. The kingdom is busy, but leaderless. Second, resentment. He feels unrecognized at work, in love, in life, but can't see that he's the one who abdicated recognition by giving away his authority. Third, compulsion. He becomes addicted to fixing others, managing outcomes, or overachieving, anything to distract from the emptiness of his throne. None of this is failure. It's the soul's way of saying you are living too small for your own potential. The good news? The king never truly dies. He waits. Beneath every frustration, every burnout, every moment of, I can't keep living like this, there is the voice of the inner king saying, then stop. 3. Origins and the boy who stayed. To understand why so many men lose their throne, we have to look backward, not at history, but at boyhood. The first king a boy ever meets is his father. Not because the father is perfect, but because he's the first embodiment of law, order, and strength. If that father was loving but inconsistent, the boy learns that leadership is unstable. If he was harsh and distant, the boy equates authority with fear. If he was absent, the boy inherits chaos. So what does the boy do? He adapts. He becomes obedient, clever, invisible, or rebellious. Each adaptation is an attempt to restore order in a world that feels unruled. But the cost is enormous. He builds an identity, not a self. That boy grows up and his armor becomes his personality. He prides himself on being rational, calm, high-performing. But inside there's a silent ache. Who's actually leading my life? Reclaiming the inner king begins by visiting that boy, not to relive his pain, but to tell him what he never heard, that the kingdom didn't fall because of him, that he doesn't need to perform to earn authority, that it's safe to grow into the man he once needed. You can't build an authentic throne on the ruins of a boy's confusion. You have to give that boy what his world couldn't, not indulgence, but direction. Then, and only then, can the man lead with clarity instead of reactivity. 4. Contact without collapse. When men finally touch the truth of how far they've drifted from their own authority, it can feel overwhelming. The temptation is either to collapse into guilt, I've wasted years, or to overcompensate with grand declarations, from now on I'll take control. Both are traps. Contact isn't about dramatics. It's about seeing clearly. You begin to notice how much of your life has been shaped by reaction instead of intention. How often you've let your mood, your partner, your phone, or your fear dictate what kind of man you are that day. Contact means saying, I have been unled. Not because you're weak, but because you forgot the sound of your own command. The king doesn't rush to fix it. He sits in the discomfort until wisdom arrives. This is where discipline matures into authority. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most men call it stress. But what they're really feeling is the absence of sovereignty. When you stop performing leadership and start embodying it, everything slows down. Decisions become deliberate. Words carry weight. You begin to act from center, not from noise. That's the moment the king re-enters the room. 5. Containment before expression. Before the king can bless, he must contain. Containment is what separates kingship from chaos. It's the discipline of holding emotion, power, and responsibility without exploding or withdrawing. Many men, especially those who have never seen healthy authority, mistake containment for repression. They believe that to be calm is to be detached. But true containment isn't detachment, it's ownership. The king doesn't suppress his anger, he directs it. He doesn't hide his pain, he integrates it. He doesn't deny desire, he channels it into creation rather than consumption. A man who cannot contain his own power is possessed by it. A man who can contain it becomes a vessel for transformation in his relationships, his work, his community. And here's where most modern men get lost. They seek emotional release, not emotional responsibility. They want to vent, to purge, to let it out. But the king doesn't need catharsis. He needs clarity. His calm is not numbness, it's authority over his own storm. Containment gives rise to presence. Presence gives rise to respect. And respect, not dominance, is the natural fragrance of sovereignty. 6. Consequences of avoidance versus integration. When a man avoids his inner king, he doesn't become free. He becomes fragmented. He lives in reaction to old authority figures, to unhealed wounds, to invisible expectations. He either tries to rule everyone around him or quietly resents them for ruling him. The cost is immense. His relationships feel transactional. His work feels like servitude. His energy dissipates into proving rather than building. He becomes addicted to external validation because he's abandoned internal order. Integration changes everything. When the king returns, the noise quiets. You no longer seek control over people. You create coherence within yourself. You stop chasing approval because you start trusting your own judgment. You begin to bless instead of compete. And here's the mark of true integration: generosity. The king gives, not because he's trying to impress, but because abundance flows naturally from a life in order. The integrated man doesn't need to shout his authority. His life radiates it. 7 archetypal framing: king, warrior, magician, lover. In Jungian psychology, the king is not a solitary figure. He sits at the center of an inner court surrounded by the other 3 archetypes: the warrior, the magician, and the lover, each representing a dimension of mature masculinity. When the warrior serves the king, his aggression becomes purpose. He acts not out of rage, but conviction. He fights for what he loves, not just against what he hates. When the magician serves the king, his intellect becomes wisdom. He stops manipulating knowledge for ego and starts using it for creation and guidance. When the lover serves the king, his passion gains boundaries. His longing becomes devotion. He connects deeply without losing himself. And when all 3 serve together, the king finally reigns, not over others, but over himself. That is individuation, not fragmentation into roles, but the unification of energies into one coherent presence. A mature man doesn't oscillate between archetypes. He orchestrates them. 8. Responsibility and witness. Reclaiming the inner king is not a weekend revelation. It's a lifelong discipline of remembering who you are in moments when the world wants you to forget. You will need solitude to hear your own voice without interference. And you will need brotherhood, men who hold you accountable to the throne you've rebuilt. Because power without witness turns into delusion. You don't need followers, you need mirrors. Responsibility here doesn't mean rigidity. It means living as though your presence matters, because it does. Every choice you make is a royal decree. Every boundary you set or neglect shapes the kingdom around you. The king energy lives through responsibility, not the kind imposed by others, but the kind chosen from within. And remember, you will fail. You will lose your temper. You will doubt yourself. The goal is not perfection, it's reliability. The king doesn't have to be flawless. He has to be available. You asked how to reclaim the inner king. The answer is not in 5 steps you can check off. It's in 5 recognitions that reshape the man you already are. Remember what power truly is. Not dominance, but order. Not ego, but responsibility. Not applause, but presence. There is a king in you, not waiting for a crown, but for attention. He does not roar. He watches. He decides. He blesses. He builds. The world doesn't need louder men. It needs centered ones. Men whose authority comes not from force, but from alignment. So rise, not as a performer, but as a steward of your own life. Sit on your throne again. Be that man. Not perfectly, reliably. Begin.